Vandergraaf for sponsoring this month's edition of Road to Recovery. Visit their website for more information about the Vandergraaf drum motor, designed specifically for heavy industry applications.
Hello, and welcome to another video edition of Pit and Quarry's Road to Recovery series. My name is Zach Mentz, Managing Editor of Pit and Quarry, and today I'm joined by John Scepaniak, Project Manager at Minnesota-based WMD Scepaniak, as he offers some insight on the state of the aggregate industry and what to expect in the months ahead. John, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start off. Obviously, 2020 has been a unique year for a lot of different reasons, but starting off with your company, WMD Scepaniak, what's new these days? Where are you guys operating, and what are some of the projects you're working on?
For us, not much, to be honest. What we've seen is taking on some new clients, some larger quantities. Our operational area is, for the most part, the same. Minnesota, North and South Dakota, primarily. We did take on a client in Wisconsin, which is new for us. We're hoping that's an emerging market as it's right next door to our home base. Colorado, Wyoming stuff is inactive this year. Some of those projects are, biannual quantities, so we'll probably return to those in 21. But for the most part, it's business as usual for us.
It sounds like, all things considered, that's pretty good news to hear that it's business as usual. One of the hot topics that has been on the industry's mind for years now is infrastructure, of course. Anytime you say that word, it's kind of a buzzword in the industry these days. The U.S. House of Representatives recently introduced a nearly $500 billion infrastructure proposal that's expected to be introduced in the House floor in July. Similarly, the Trump administration says it intends to invest nearly $1 billion in America's infrastructure. As the topic of infrastructure continues to gain momentum on both sides of the political aisle, how would any potential infrastructure funding impact your company and the aggregate industry as a whole?
For us as a company, it would be very helpful if the bills would be passed. Reason being is we see it on a different scales. We operate with state projects as well as small local county governments, as well as all the way down to townships in rural areas of various states we work in. So seeing those infrastructure bills can be very, very, very beneficial for forecasting in the next few years, because it is a large percentage of our work. And it's tough because from the, opening up of pits all the way to processing the materials to loading out and placing it, we're vertically integrated in that whole area of the business. So when infrastructure bills are passed, they help us the full scale of the business is what I'm saying. So a lot of our other material customers, they operate on residential construction and things like that. But any big highway bills would really be helpful. I mean, they keep our full scale of our business busy.
Yeah, and I think your sentiment is one that you'll find common throughout the industry. It seems like there's really no downside to infrastructure funding coming along. So we'll continue to wait and see, but we'll certainly hope for the best there. And hopefully, the administration can get something on the table set there. Of course, besides infrastructure, another big topic in 2020 has been obviously the coronavirus pandemic. As we go back to say March of this year, when it really first took hold in the U.S., how did the coronavirus initially impact WMD Scepaniak, and what are some of the challenges that your company still faces even today, and what are some of the adjustments you've made?
I remember it was right after ConExpo. We returned home, and that was when things started to snowball. And I think everybody's initial reaction to the pandemic was, "What is this? What's going on? How serious is this?" So as we began to learn more about the situation, we began to realize that a lot of the recommended precautions, social distancing, things like that, we were already employing. Our crews are anywhere from 2 to 6 people. The guys naturally are in their machine, really up close and personal all day long. So a lot of that stuff was mitigated just by nature. We did see some challenges working for some of our larger corporate clients as far as needing to get pre-screened before entering the mine site and things like that. Nothing really that impeded production per se. It was just, I think everybody in the construction industry that we work with did a really good job of collaborating and understanding that we've never been in this situation before. Can't really plan for this. Let's just work together and be understanding. And what we've seen is flexibility with deadlines, things like that. But like I said right away, for the most part, we were doing a lot of the things to best practices for this situation from the jump. I mean, it was just by nature. So, we did small things like, distribute sanitation supplies to all of our crews and things like that so they can keep their equipment extra clean. And we pride ourselves in having clean equipment, but from microbiological level, I guess I'm kind of unsure on where we stand on that, but it was just something that, as far as sanitizing wipes, things like that, just keep your machine clean in between shifts. So, but yeah, other than that, that was really what we saw change. But as far as that goes, I guess another thing on a human standpoint, what we saw is, although our industry was still kind of kept trucking along because it was deemed essential in the different states we worked, there was really no shutdown of our industries. What we saw was people who had been, furloughed or laid off elsewhere, trickle over to our company and try our industry out, which I think was maybe a silver lining for the whole situation for us, as we and various other construction industries were keeping moving while other people were out of work. So some other people maybe tried our industry out with us or many other companies, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's something I guess I hadn't really considered throughout all this. Obviously, the number of job losses throughout the coronavirus pandemic and some of the economic challenges this year has, not been easy for anyone. But I'd never considered that, they might move to an industry like the aggregate industry that was largely, kept chugging along throughout the pandemic. So I like how you mentioned that's kind of a silver lining there. Speaking of silver linings, we know that the first half of this year was unpredictable, and the second half of this year in 2020 might be equally unpredictable. But as you look to the months ahead, both in the rest of 2020 and even into early 2021, what are some reasons for optimism about the aggregate industry, and what are you looking forward to?
Obviously with it being an election year, there's a lot of unknowns and questions and things that are out of our control. I mean, we have a lot of customers doing change orders, adding quantities to already existing sites, and that's been really good for us. So we've seen a very, very strong workload come in this year. I think we had probably 60-70% of our workload booked before ConExpo. And then, we have our stuff for state and local governments that come on later, or a renewable energy project that comes on board. And, so it's challenging at times to fit clients in the schedule, which is difficult because you hate to turn people away or turn down good work. But it's just been something where we've been very fortunate as a company to be busier than we've ever been as far as revenue. And it's exciting for us to see at the end of this year how we're going to be able to perform in some of these unprecedented times. And I'm optimistic. I think it's going to turn out very well for us.
Well, that's certainly encouraging to hear. You said the words right there, busier than you've ever been. And that's, we can only imagine how much that would increase if a potential infrastructure package were to come to fruition. So that's great news to hear. Again, that is John Scepaniak, project manager at WMD Scepaniak, sharing his insights on the aggregate industry and what to expect going forward. John, thanks for joining Pit and Quarry for another edition of our Road to Recovery series. We hope to hear from you down the road.
Thank you to Vandergraaf for sponsoring this month's edition of Road to Recovery. Visit their website for more information about the Vandergraaf drum motor, designed specifically for heavy industry applications.